Hey everybody, Akash Inti here talking a little bit about what are clinical trials and why are they important for the biopharma industry. So let's start with, first off, what is clinical research? It's kind of a bit broader than clinical trials, and then we'll dive deeper into clinical trials themselves. So clinical trials composes of two types of studies. One is an observational study, and the second is a clinical trial. So clinical research itself is medical research involving people. In other words, it's really looking at a person and it's observing their health. Observational studies, the first one that we're talking about, observes people in normal settings. So this could be anything from gathering medical data, like medical exams or tests. It could be a questionnaire. And really, it's just to kind of get a better sense of what is the health of a person like over time, and how do different lifestyles impact a person's health. A second type of clinical research is clinical trials, and this is really what we're going to dig down deep into today. So clinical trials are research studies performed in people aimed at evaluating a medical, surgical, behavioral, pharmacological, etc. type of intervention. It's really the best way to find out, does a new treatment, like a new drug, a device, a diet, does it work? So that's efficacy, and is it safe? Now, oftentimes, clinical trials are used for assessing new treatments themselves. So let's get down into what is the structure of a clinical trial, and we talked a little bit about its importance. It's really to test, is a drug safe and efficacious, as according to the standards of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. In order to even begin clinical trials, there must be a lot of studies done prior to that, and this is what we call preclinical studies. In other words, these are studies where one is testing a drug. We'll take this case of a drug in cells, in like a petri dish. It could be in tissue, living tissue, again outside of a human body. It could be in animals. It could be in rats, dogs, pigs, chimps, etc. But really, you're testing a drug outside of a human. So you put together all of this paperwork, and that's called preclinical studies. And you file what's called an investigational new drug application, or an IND, as we say in industry. Now, an IND, the purpose of it is to say that we've done all of these studies, we think this drug is safe and efficacious, and we want to test it in humans for this particular disease. So FDA is like, okay, we'll read through all of this, okay, you know what, look, this is good. We agree with you. I think the evidence that you've provided thus far is suitable enough to show that this could be a safe and efficacious drug. We'll start you on a phase 1 trial. Okay, so drug manufacturer starts the phase 1 trial, and the purpose of this trial is to make sure that the drug is safe. So oftentimes you'll have a sample size of about 30 patients or so, and usually you're testing this in healthy people, really just to make sure that the drug won't kill anyone, it doesn't have any adverse side effects or things of this nature. So you go through your trial, you run it, you get all of your data, you go back to the FDA and you're like, FDA, here's the data from our phase 1 trial. It shows, let's assume that the data was positive and it shows that the drug is safe. Cool, your drug is safe. Let's move on to, FDA is like, we approve you for so manufacturer's like, can we go for a phase 2? FDA is like, yes, you can go for a phase 2 based on you showed this drug is safe. Now let's see if it's efficacious. So same type of idea here is that you are running again a smaller study showing that I've got this indication or this disease and I'm applying this drug to this indication or disease. Let's see if it works. So time passes. In the group that takes the drug, it shows that the data is positive, or that the drug works as intended, or it's efficacious as compared to a placebo, or in other words, just a pill, but it's like a sugar pill. It has no actual effect on the human body. So you go back to the FDA after your phase 2 trial and you're like, well, we've proven that this drug is efficacious. It works for the disease as we said it would. Can we do a phase 3? FDA is like, looks through the paperwork. Yep, this is all good. You can move on to phase 3. Now, phase 3, in those phase 1 and phase 2 trials, you're really looking at smaller patient populations, or you're looking at small samples. So this is about 30 or so patients. In phase 3, you're looking at hundreds, maybe even thousands of patients. So really the purpose of the phase 3 is to show that all of the data beforehand, it wasn't a fluke. So you run your phase 3 trial, and takes a couple years. These are huge trials, as I mentioned, so it often takes a few more years than some of the other ones. You come back to the FDA and you're like, we've run our preclinical studies, our phase 1s, our phase 2s, our phase 3s, they all came out positive, and here's all of the data that we've put together. And the manufacturer packages all of this data up and ships it over to the FDA along with a new drug application, or an NDA for small molecules, or a BLA, biologics licensing application, I think. I don't remember the name. Again, same idea. So they go to the FDA. FDA reads through all of this data, and they're like, yep, we agree with you on this. This is cool. You can market this drug. Now, the drug is called registered in the phase of development. So drug is approved by the FDA, but it hasn't gone on the market yet. Oftentimes, FDA will ask for a phase 4 trial. Phase 4 trial is just to show that, okay, you've done this in this particular period of time. We just want to make sure that this treatment that you said is as it is. We want to make sure that maybe there were some things that we were a bit cautious about, that it had a small side effect that we want to measure and make sure isn't going to negatively impact people over time, or it's really just to prove long-term, because we've only had this short period of data, maybe about 10 years of data, but years down the road we might see that it has bad impacts to some part of your body. So FDA might want to learn a bit more about this, and they ask the manufacturer to approve or to just do a phase 4 study. At this point, the manufacturer goes on the market and starts selling it. But at high level, this is kind of how the clinical trials pathway works. Now, why is this important? Well, drug developers need to go through each of these different, run through each of these trials in order to prove that their drug works and that they can get onto the market. We need to recognize that the FDA is kind of the gatekeeper, if you will, of all new drugs into the market. And so by working with the FDA, in order for a new drug manufacturer to get their drug sellable or able to be sold on the open market, they need to go to the FDA and interact with them and make sure that the drug, as we talked about, is safe and efficacious. Clinical trials are huge in the biopharma industry. This is kind of like one of the backbones and basics of the industry itself. So really, really important to get at least a high-level understanding of how does this work and what's its purpose. I'm more than happy to jump into a bit more into some of the details around this. So it could be anything from like, what are preclinical studies, or what are treatment arms, what do endpoints mean, how does one structure a clinical trial, how does one identify a patient population. More than happy to go into any of these types of topics. If you're interested, leave a comment or a like, and share this if you find it interesting. I'd love to continue providing you guys some content in terms of learning more about what is biopharma, what is the industry at least at a very high level, and then what are some of the different avenues that one can go down. As I've spent some time in different areas of the industry, more so on the business side, I've gotten some flavors of what it's like to be in some of these different areas, and I'd love to share this type of content with you. So again, if you enjoy this, please like, subscribe, share, and I will catch you guys soon. Keep healing.